writing from a mother to her son. Okay, and so we see, and she's teaching him about this woman, about what to look out for in a woman, about this what we see as a virtuous woman. And as I was thinking of how to present this message, and I realized that we are so far removed from what a biblical woman is in society, that I figured I should go back in history and give a bit of a history lesson on how we got to where women are today. Now, I'm not preaching, this is not a message just for the women. Men, you listen to this because men can learn what to look out for in a woman. Women can learn what to be as a woman. And so everybody gains from this. And so today, it's going to end up being a two-part message. Today we're going to look at just the history and basically look at what not to be as a woman and how we got here. And then the next time I preach, I want to go through the actual passage and go through all the attributes that this woman has and bring to light how she would be as a Christian woman today. Because this was written prior to the church and to Christ, but how these principles apply to today. Anyways, let's start with a word of prayer, and then we'll read the passage. Lord, I do thank you for your goodness. Thank you for your word. Thank you for these young people who are here today. Thank you for all that have attended, Lord. I do ask, Lord, that you would speak through your servant, Lord. I do pray that you would use me as a vessel to speak your word, Lord. Empty me of myself, Lord. I do pray that you would your message will impact the hearts and minds of the people that listen to it. For it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen. Now, Proverbs 31, if you've got your Bibles, turn there. And I'm going to read from verse 10. Okay. So it says, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life." I was supposed to get glasses this week, which would help me, but that didn't work out. Anyways, she seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She rises also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. She considereth a field, and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hands she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength, and strengtheneth her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold to distaff. Anyone want to continue reading? Well, from verse 20. Okay. So there's a lot there about her. Now we're going to get back to that, but I wanted to read that, and so I want to jump into looking at the history of feminism. Who knows anything? Who can tell me something about feminism? Something that maybe feminism is achieved in history. Yes. Women voting. Yep. That was that. You know what wave that was? No. Okay. So you got yeah. Equal education. Yep. So these are good ones. These are from first wave feminism. So there's 4 waves of feminism. If you look into it, you got what these ladies just mentioned are things from the first wave, which is from the early 1900s, pre-World War One, and so women back then in the Western society, I'm not sure about. Obviously, different countries had different laws, but Western society, they weren't able to vote, they weren't able to own land. Sometimes they weren't able to. They couldn't go to universities. There was a lot of restrictions on women. Now, people will still argue whether women should be able to vote today, and we're not going to get into that. That's a silly argument, but some men argue that wouldn't be the case. Yeah. So what else? What other achievements has the feminist movement accomplished? Anyone else? Yeah, Mike. Yeah. So that's more modern stuff. So be more specific. Can you be more? Yep. So that started in the second wave movement. So you're talking about 1960s, about 2 decades after World War II. I'll go back into how they got there, but that's one from second wave. Yeah. Equal pay. This was from the This was actually a proper thing in the 1960s, where women that's where they were fighting for it, where women didn't get paid the same as men for the same job. So they were fighting to get paid equally for the same thing, which they achieved. And the thing is, they're still whinging about that today, but it's all on false pretenses. It's actually illegal to pay a woman less for the same job as a man. But they say that women are paid less, and the way they do that is with some sneaky maths. They basically just say, because you might have heard it. Who's heard this pay gap thing? And you've heard about that today, right? Women get paid less than men. Well, all they do is they get tax returns, basically, women, men, and they say, okay, well, this year, women only earned 20% less than men earned this year. They're looking at a whole nation. Well, duh, yes, that's going to happen. One, less women work than men, and so they're going to be less women putting a tax return forward. But not only that, you've got the fact that you've got the women generally choose lower paying jobs like childcare and things teaching and stuff like that. They're not so heavily in the engineering and all the higher paid jobs. And you've got the fact that also women work part-time and casual because they have families and they don't commit themselves completely like a man does to work. So all these factors, if you actually look into it, a woman gets paid more if you do the math properly. There's advantages like maternity leave and all this other stuff. Anyways, that's another one. Anything else that we can think of? Yeah? No? Okay. I'll tell you some more. So we've got, a brief history. So in the first wave, early 1900s, women fought for this right to vote, right to own land, and all these things which, I think biblically, if you look at it, if both are equal in God's eyes, then these things should be allowed. Now you've got in the second wave, this is when things change. So in World War I, World War II, you had, before that, women weren't really in the workforce much. But during the World Wars, men went out to war and they needed people to make things still, to manufacture weapons, manufacture things, whatever it was. The women had to go to work. That was the duty at the time. And there's this saying, it goes, the men went to war and came back, but the women never did. So the women went to work and never came back, and they continued working and were much more present in the workforce after that. Just bear with me. I know, like it may seem far from where we need to be, but it'll all tie together. Anyways, so during that time, you have now women. A lot more women are in the workforce. This is, and women's rights are increasing. But during the 60s, you have something called the sexual revolution, and that was mixed in with the second wave feminism, second wave of feminism, and you have things now like there was a lot of good stuff like equal pay and maternal rights and all this sort of stuff. So a woman can, not lose a job if she gets pregnant. It has to, like, she can kind of go back to it, whether it's good or not. But these were reasonable things to request. But the right to abortion was another one during that time. So you had women fighting for the legalization of abortion. And also the attack on men started during that time. The attack on the head of the home. And this just the independent woman who's independent of her family, basically. Now, third wave started in the 1990s. Just broke my pen. 1990s. Now, this kind of built on the second wave, but it was less focused. It had so many different things. They started doing weird things. There was still more of this like sexual freedom for women, and like the whole the push for contraceptives and abortion clinics, the whole infrastructure of what we see for that sort of stuff, and the attack on the patriarchal system. Everyone know what a patriarchal system is? No? It's basically the man being the head of the home. You got patriarchal, and then you've got matriarchal, woman being the head. So you got this patriarchal system was heavily under attack, and you can actually see that through media of the time. So TV shows and movies. So you got like TV shows, for example. Previous, like 1960s, 70s, TV shows were very family focused. The man was the hero of the home, and he always had the answer, and he was respected. Fast forward to the 90s, you've got things like Friends, where you don't even see parents around. You've got things like The Simpsons, which the father is this dopey guy, and the kid knows all, and he's wise. I can't even think of it, but they started to mock the father in the home, and the whole family image was gone, almost gone. There was that attack on the family unit was well and truly underway. And then you have also this animal rights started through the feminist movement. I don't understand why, but animal rights and also transgender rights. So men that wanted to be women could then have the same rights as women and all this sort of stuff. And that kind of then merged into what we have now, this fourth wave, which is just lunacy. The old school feminists don't even like what's going on now, most of them, because they're still screaming about having unequal pay and unequal rights. There's this rape culture thing now. Who's heard of that? Anyone heard of that? Rape culture. Apparently, like it's big in America, but everything that happens in America overflows here. And it's this thing where it says that women are being raped, and it's not being dealt with, basically. And so what they're talking about is women who are what it comes down to is women who are acting like men, who want to just be promiscuous everywhere, are then screaming rape when it happens, and then nothing's being done about it, because they were willingly engaged at the time, but later on felt guilty about it or whatever it was. And yet there's all these cases, and now it's called the Me Too movement or something like that. There's a whole lot of garbage, and now they want to. Abortion is already kind of accepted in society. Now they want to push for abortion to be done, and it's being done. Abortion to be done up to the day of birth, and in some cases after. So this is something that the feminist movement is doing, and like I said, we haven't got enough time to cover all of it, but I just want to give you a rundown to how we got where we are today, So in essence, the feminist movement hates women. It sounds strange, but they hate women because the biblical idea of what a woman is, they hate. Okay, and so they want to turn women into men. This is what's happened. So all this turns a woman into a man. And they also, not just happy with turning a woman into a man, they want to turn men into women. They want to feminize men. They have feminized men. This whole idea of a strong man leading has been attacked by the far left and the feminist movement. And so you have men who are getting softer in appearance and also in their attitude. Men have never looked so pretty, I think, in society. And so that's well under attack. You'll see now, it stirs me when men speak to the boss talking about their wife. I don't like it personally. It's not good for the woman. It's also it flips what God designed on its head, which is absolutely wrong. God has an order of things. Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, and we're going to look at verse 3. Just to see what God's order of things is. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3 says, "But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ. The head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God." Now, this upsets even Christian women, so-called Christian women, and this whole idea of the headship of man being an oppression to women. And it's a very wrong attitude. So a leader, for example, Pastor Sam is the elected leader of our church. Is he any better than any of us? Is he any higher in God's eyes than any of us? Anyone? No? No, he's not. He is our chosen leader. He's equal to us. He had a different job to us. All right? Any sort of that sort of system, that same principle applies to here. So you've got this idea that a woman, it is what's the word? Anyway, it's oppressive for a woman to be subject to her husband, to be submissive to her husband, is, put it this way, at the end of this verse, it says, and the head of Christ is God. Right? So if the head of Christ is God, was God the Father and God the Son, are they equal? They are, right? We know biblically that they're equal. To say that man leading and woman following is not equal is to say that Christ is not equal to God, according to this verse. So Christ is equal to God the Father, the same way that a woman is equal to a man through God's ordained structure. It just means that the man has a responsibility of leading, and the woman has a responsibility of supporting her husband as he leads, and to follow him in faith, in God's perfect order. Now, in any society that is going to function properly, there must be two pillars. That's authority and subjection. Subjection to authority. Anywhere. So if we weren't subject to our authority in society, which is the law and the police that keep that, there would be anarchy. We would not feel safe. All right? There's always, wherever you are, whether to your parents, whether to your teachers, whether to each other, in an order of leadership here, if there's no subjection to authority, well, you have a very chaotic culture. And so that needs to be there everywhere. Now, we see that in the Proverbs 31 woman, let's going back to our text, we see that everything she does is for her family and for her family, and before God and her family. Everything, like as we go through it next time, I'm gonna highlight that. Now the head. No, we already covered that. Now, let's have a look at what is a virtuous woman. I want to look at verse 10 and focus in on verse 10, the beginning. Who can find a virtuous woman? What is virtue? Someone tell me what they think virtue is. That doesn't have to be right. Give me moral excellence. Yeah, moral excellence is the English translation of it. So you're right. The Hebrew idea of what virtue is implies more of efficiency, diligence, and strength. So yes, moral excellence is part of what it is, but a lot of it is, if you look at the characteristics of this woman here, you see that she's efficient. Man, like she must be busy. She has her own business. She runs a household. She has people that work for her. She makes things. She looks after the poor. She buys and sells and grows things. And she's a very efficient person. Very, very efficient. Today, we waste a lot of time. Let's be honest. We waste a lot of time through our little gadgets and whatever we do. We can always find more time to be efficient. Now, diligence. The idea of diligence is doing something properly. All right? Having an attitude that wants to do something properly. And so this is another attitude which I feel is lost in women today and men. I'm not just picking on the women. But this attitude of trying to do something properly and with wholeheartedly is being lost. And strength. Now, the feminist movement is trying to empower women, but it's done quite the opposite. It hasn't strengthened women. It's actually weakened their position in society. And so strength of character, physical strength, as we see later on, it says that she strengtheneth her arms and her loins, her legs, because ask my wife how heavy a baby gets, especially when you got a sack of potatoes like my one, it gets heavy. You need to be strong. Pick him up, put him down, pick him up, put him down, chuck him on your back, try and juggle things because he wants to be held all the time. If you're a woman, you need to be strong. I remember my grandma, man, she was a strong woman. I couldn't believe the stuff that she could pick up. And my grandma could do the splits up until she died. It was crazy. She was just amazingly flexible. She'd stretch every morning and like she could, yeah. Anyways, side note. But she was a strong woman. She'd walk 5 or 10 Ks every day. She was very fit. And so there's nothing wrong with a woman trying to increase her strength. Not for looks, but for practicality, you need it. So start doing those arm curls, girls, because you're gonna need them when you're carrying a baby. Well, you have an advantage. You got hips. So men, when we carry a baby, we've got to literally carry the baby. My wife, she just sits like that. There's a seat there, especially for the baby. It's amazing, right? It's great. I have to chuck him on my shoulder. Now, so the descriptions we see of her in the verses following also implies that she is chaste and pure. So she's not a loose woman; she's a pure woman. But it's more so a and strong and efficient person. So women, you want to look, you want to see what God wants you to be. He wants you to be strong, efficient, industrious, meaning look to create things, to make things, learn the skills that you need in life to be this. And she's also, you can see she's a completely selfless person, a very selfless person, because everything she does, other than making clothes for herself, she doesn't do a whole lot for herself. She looks good according to what we see. She covers herself in fine linen and her family, but she's very little of what she does is focused on herself, and this is a problem with our society in general, but more so of women with this selfie generation. Everyone's just taking photos. Look how pretty I am. glamorous I look, and I gotta have all the latest this and that. Yeah, she looked, according to this, she made her own clothes and she made really good stuff. Scarlet. All right, linen and scarlet. She made good quality clothes for her and her family. But I don't think there was a focus on just the outside. Now, the next part of the verse talks about, it says, her price is far above rubies. Now, I also wondered, why rubies? Why not diamonds? Why not emerald? Why rubies? I did a bit of research, and even though diamonds today are more expensive, rubies are far, far rarer than a diamond. The price of diamonds is kind of messed around with markets. They hold them. They actually hoard them so they can keep the price up. But they're quite abundant. They put them on the end of drill bits and saws and stuff like that, so you can cut through concrete and glass, and so they actually aren't that precious. But a ruby is something that's hard to find, and in some cases it's a lot more expensive, depending on the rarity of it. And so the point is, part of what they're saying is, part of what this passage is saying, a woman, this type of woman, is a very rare thing, and her price, her value, is far above that of what a ruby is. And so but the world, what do you think? Does the world today value women? Tell me. Or Angela thinks yes, possibly. How do they show value for women today? Give me an example. Anyone? I know they think they do. You're right, but like how do they actually show it? Because I know how they used to show it. Just a little thing, like a man opening the door for a woman, used to show how much a man, and it was a stranger, or a woman would always go first. Or if a man, mum tells me stories about like when she was growing, if men would get up on the train, they would get up off their seat for a woman to sit down. That was normal 40, 50 years ago, right? Not that long ago, really. So society valued women so much, a man would move out of her way, would open a door for her, would get off a seat for her. And it showed how much society valued the woman. Today, we don't see that. It's kind of frowned upon. I almost got into a fight with a woman once for wanting to let her through. She was a butch. And I remember it was years ago. I just stepped out of the way to let her first. She goes, "No, you go first." And I'm like, "No, I'm not going first. You can go first." I just stood there. I think I actually walked away, so she had to go first, right? But it's attacked. This idea of I want to show you some respect and value. It's attacked. It's crazy. I think the world today hates. We talked about it. The world today hates women, and hates them so much they just want to turn them into men. What do you reckon about that? And even the way they dress. Okay, he was coming. I had to say something about the idea of a woman. Now, I'm talking about modesty. I'm talking about a woman dressing like a man. This unisex dress. It's prior to World War II. There was it was such a big deal if a woman wore pants. I don't know where I stand on that. I'm not going to get into pants and skirts and whatever else, but it's more so the idea of a woman needs to look like a woman and a man needs to look like a man. Some of you men are looking too feminine, and the women are looking way too masculine. And so whatever you do, you need to make sure you look feminine, because this is what the world wants you not to do. It wants you to look masculine. How many times, I don't know about you guys, but there's so many times I said to my wife, "Is that a man or a woman? Like I can't figure it out." And then the sweetest women, they got these short haircuts with the shaved sides, and they're wearing just men's clothes. And I can't figure it out until they turn around. Oh yeah, she's a woman. Sometimes I still can't figure it out. Now, yeah, femininity today is frowned upon. If you're a woman that wants to look feminine and act, it's it's not a popular thing to do. Purity is mocked as well. So if you're a pure woman or a pure man, it's mocked in society. You're encouraged to go and experience things and just go and live your life and do whatever feels good. This is another thing that's come from this idea. There's no self-control. Purity is mocked. Submissiveness is called weakness and oppression. So a woman that submits to her husband, she's a weak woman. She's crazy. I remember hearing just recently in the news, they made fun of this woman who seemed to be a good mother. Whether she was a Christian or not, I don't know. But she put something on her social media about the fact that she got up at 4 o'clock before her husband got up, before her family got up. She prepared breakfast for them and how she served her family and her husband. The media, our mainstream media, took that on like one of the morning shows and absolutely mocked her for it. How she's taking women back. All this progress that feminists have achieved, and she's just destroying all that. How sick is that? How demented is that? That this woman who wanted to serve her family was then mocked and scorned on public television nationwide. That's just crazy. But this is what society is doing to women today. Women that devote themselves to their husbands and children are laughed and scorned. The world wants to empower women, but in doing so has cheapened them. This idea of one of the things we get from all these feminist movement is women are now encouraged more than ever before to use their sexuality to get ahead in life. Every second woman will call herself an Instagram model, or whatever they are. Yeah, it's crazy, because they just reveal themselves online. Are you guys playing games over there? You're not listening. How sad. Yeah, you're playing noughts and crosses or something. Anyways, so the idea of if you've got to flaunt it, this whole idea is just so twisted. The feminist movement has made and pushed for things like prostitution is a good job. It's a job now with all the benefits of every other job. You have to get an ABN, and you pay your taxes, and you have all these things these frameworks that protect and encourage that industry. And also the pornography industry was pushed through all this to cheapen women. This isn't empowered women. It's cheapened them. And the childcare business is booming more than ever because women are encouraged to have their children, dump them in childcare, and go to work. Let the government take care of your children. We don't see this in the Proverbs 31 woman. We see her taking care of her family. But no, our society says you need to get back to work because you need more things. So put the child in childcare and off you go, and let us raise your children. Well, the government's successfully done that for the past couple of decades at least, and we are seeing in our society the results of that, because the mother is the cornerstone of society. Other than Christ, we know that Christ is the cornerstone, but the mother in the home who has a responsibility of raising the children, of supporting her husband, all these things have been attacked and are being destroyed, and we need to watch out for that. Young women, young men, you need to look for a woman who wants to please God, who is a Christian first, who wants to please God with her life. Young women, you need to try and be this godly woman who is going to add value to society, to your immediate society, the people you're friends with, and outside of that. The church itself is suffering as a result of lack of women who want to be godly women, a lack of femininity, a lack of commitment to their families. And so, like I said, I want to highlight the problems today. I know it's a lot of doom and gloom, but in the next message, it'll be different. I want to highlight to you. I want to paint this picture of what you need to be. Yeah, and so let's just, in Proverbs, I just want to look at one passage before we close. In Proverbs, there's an example, the exact opposite. At the beginning of Proverbs, in chapter 2, there's the exact opposite to what this woman is. And unfortunately, if we go through it, you'll see too many similarities to women today. Now, in verse 16 of Proverbs 2, so at the beginning of Proverbs chapter 2, he's saying, my son. So Solomon is writing this to his son to learn from him. And he's talking about a few different things, but I'll get back to verse 16. To deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words. You know what that means? She's very persuasive with her words and very slick, and she can get a guy to do whatever he wants with her words. We're friends, aren't we? You can buy this for me. You can do this for me. What about which forsaketh the guide of her youth? So she was raised well, but forgets it. Doesn't want anything to do with it. All right? Is this hitting home for anybody? For any people here? And forgetteth the covenant of her God, meaning she forgets the laws, she forgets the promises of God, she forgets who God is. Ladies, listening, please. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. That's not saying very much about what sort of character she is. All right? Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. None that goeth unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life. So she's so destructive in her behavior that he's talking about any man that it has anything to do with her is destroyed. She destroys him. And I know I've met men like that who have been destroyed by the women or woman in their life. Just do one I think of. This man I met when I was traveling in America, Lebanese man. Just met him at a fair, and he invited me to his house. And he had beautiful kids, and he was telling about his wife, who what he could provide her wasn't enough. Now, he wasn't a slouch. He was a businessman, and I'm sure he was providing well, but it just wasn't enough for her. So while he was on his business trip, she decided to go for somebody else who had more money than him. And this man was, I could see, he was a lovely man, but he was such a shell of who he would have been, because he had been destroyed by this wicked woman who wanted nothing, who had nothing good to offer him, who was sucking the life out of him and everything else, and left him empty. And so this is the opposite of what you should be. And if any of what that passage says is you, lady, you need to look into that. Now, like I said next time, it'll be nicer, I promise. And we want to look at what and who we want to be and want to find as a godly woman. And any questions at all? Didn't think so. Let's just close in the word of prayer. Thank you for your patience. Heavenly Father, we do thank you for your goodness.